Be spending 5 points to move, explore, attack.
I feel like this is an updated version of the last studio, don't you think? Hello everyone, welcome back to the Wolf Pack. Now I know it's a little bit early to be doing one of those what did I play this month, but I was very inspired by Jenna who did a video like this the past month, and I really wanted to talk about the games that I played this month because we played an unreal amount of games this month. And B, I don't know when I am gonna fit in some filming time between now and Gen Con, so when I can, I'm just gonna fit it in. With that said, July was such an amazing month. I think it's just because summer, they have a little bit more time off, a little more free time, and also I got to play games with some fellow content creator friends as well. So best gaming month of the year by far. Now let's go ahead and begin. I have my BG Stats app. Also, if you use any other BG stat tracker, let me know which one you use in the comments below. Okay, the first game that started off this month was Kemet-Blood Sand, which is going to be the next video coming up on this channel. It's going to be a gameplay featuring 3 players. It's going to be with Josh and Nasir, who have popped in this channel from time to time. And Kemet was the first game because I actually did a couple of lifestyle photos. I'll go and pop them up on the screen right here. Now overall, Kemet is actually a pretty old game, and they remade it recently with Kemet-Blood Sand, adding in a bunch of new changes. Little surprising with the update because the rulebook was a mess to follow through, and there have been so many changes to the rulebook as well, which made it a mission to do the recent gameplay. But with that said, I did and still enjoy Kemet a lot. I still, back it being on my top 10 list of games for 2021. Amazing game. The combat is really satisfying because everyone has like the same set of 8 cards, and it's all about prioritizing which cards to play. But I think the more I'm playing the game, the more I'm realizing that there are 2 major things that are starting to bother me about it. First off, with combat, we're starting to use the same cards to fight with because there's like a very clear card that you use to power up to pretty much win battles because it's the highest strength and the one that will guarantee the kills in combat. I think the hand management is starting to become clearer and clearer the more I play, despite me losing. I just feel like the direction of what cards to play is becoming very straightforward. And the second core part of Kemet-Blood Sand is buying power tiles. These are going to give you significant buffs throughout the game and you gain them permanently. But what's really cool is that you can also specialize in the type of power tiles that you buy. Red being aggression, blue being defensive, and the other ones being hybrids of the 2. And I just feel like there should be a cap on the amount of power tiles you should buy, because by the end, when you see the gameplay later on, like we all stockpile a whole bunch of power tiles. And I just feel like the whole less is more can really be implemented into Kemet to make the gameplay even tighter than it already is. I do, however, love the amount of interaction that you get at smaller player counts because the map just shrinks down a ton going to like a 2 to 3 player game. So Kemet-Blood Sand, a game that we played many times this month. I think it was, 1, 2, 3, 4 times this month. An amazing combat game that I'm always down to play, and I'm gonna definitely do a full review on it once we dive into the expansion for that. So if you have played Kemet-Blood Sand before, let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with my points. Now next up are a couple of party games that we knocked out of the park back to back because we had a group of 7 people, I think. And with that, we played 2 Rooms and a Boom. It's a game that I think is out of stock now because a lot of my friends asked to buy the copy of the game and you just can't find it anywhere nowadays, which is kind of crazy. But this game is a social deduction game. It's all about separating people into 2 groups, and it has the classic good versus evil versus neutral party in social deduction games that you get quite often, like, One Night Ultimate Werewolf and Night of the Ninja. Those all have like 3 parties, 2 parties working together, 1 self-interested party. Exact same concept, except here you have 1 group of bombers and you have 1 group of the president and protecting the president, the Secret Service, whatever you want to call them. And in the case of the Secret Service, your goal is to protect the president and make sure you are away from the bomber. And then vice versa, if you're the bomber, you're trying to get into the same room as the president. And it's amazing because it brings up so much rowdy conversation that I absolutely love this game still. I think it was such a big hit back then when I got it, maybe 2018, 2019, and it still is really fun now. It's kind of funny too because when you teach the premise of the game, like, oh, your goal is to make sure you get the president away from the bomber. And it's like, well, how do I know if I can't reveal anything about my character? And then that's where the tricky part comes in, and the really interesting part, because it's your choice to tell the truth or tell a lie. If, for instance, I was just telling the truth the entire time, like, oh, by the way, I'm the gambler. So for me, it doesn't matter which room I'm in because I just need to know which party is going to win and guess who's going to win, because then that means I win in turn. If you like playing with a ton of mind games, if you like being able to read people, if you like a game that's really good for a large group that just loves dialogue and conversation, then you will love Two Rooms and a Boom. Highly, highly recommend. Next one we played was Team 3 Green. Now there are two different versions of this game. It's pretty much it's an icebreaker. I think this is the type of game you would see if you are entering a brand new social setting and they just throw us on the table and like, hey, get along with the team, and this is one way to do so and get to know them. This is one game I can see doing just that, because there are 3 people on one team. And I actually found this game from Reina from 1 Minute Board Games. And when she played this game, I automatically knew this was going to be a big hit with us. It was, surprise, surprise. And with Team 3 Green, there are 3 roles. The first role is the architect, who is building up the blocks. The twist of this is that the architect cannot see what they are building. So they are blindfolded and they are building these blocks from hearing the direction. Second person is the person who is communicating that direction. They're not allowed to touch the blocks at all. But the twist to that role is that they cannot see the plan, the blueprint of what to build. And that's when the third person comes into play. And this person cannot talk at all, but they can only gesture. Person A, I forget the role names, must gesture to the second person, who has to communicate verbally to the builder, who's going to build out this layout of blocks, and you have like 3 minutes to do so. When you have both teams competing at the same time, it becomes super fun and everyone's just very, very antsy. But it's a light party game that you can teach in like 2 minutes. It's really fun, and also would highly recommend alongside 2 booms and a room, or 2 rooms and a boom. Now, the third party game that we played was Tapple. I've talked about this game a lot. It was on my top 10 list, surprise, surprise, for 2021 too, because it's just these party games that you remember. You know, I know like as gamers, we 100% favor the heavy, dry Euro games, the one that requires a lot of strategy, but sometimes the party games are the ones that really hit home and the ones that you remember and talk about and quote for nights to come. So Tapple, that was all played within the first 2 days. Tapple, Team 3 Green, 2 Rooms and a Boom, and Kemet-Blood Sand all played within the first 2 days of this month. Now from there, I decided to make a dent on my shelf of shame and played Clash of Rage, and I got rid of it pretty fast because combat was not for me. It was a ton of fluff and so easy to just meet your objectives, because ultimately it's a huge miniatures game where you're trying to beat the elves, because the elves are like the bad people in the storyline, and when you beat them you get crystals, and everything just seemed so straightforward, and there was a lot of missing depth to Clash of Rage. I talked about it briefly in the previous video, but just wasn't for me, and I wanted a lot more depth to combat, so that one was a quick one that I sold right away. And then we got into Dice Throne and played, I think, over 15 games this month of Dice Throne spread throughout July. I played with every single character before doing my full extensive review. This is a travel game. I am 100% bringing this to Gen Con. Hopefully I get to play this with Sam and everybody else over there. But I absolutely love this game. If you haven't played Dice Throne, now's the time to get into it, because the combat in this game, the ease of learning is just incredibly fun. There are a lot of unique abilities that you kind of have to know as you get into the game, but honestly, it's a really quick teach. You roll dice, you do things with them. That's pretty much it, and it's really fun. You need to try it out if you haven't already. Now next, we played Tidal Blades Heroes of the Reef. This was between me and Jackie. Most of these games were at a 2-player count when we could. But on Independence Day, actually, on July 4th, we played Tidal Blades Heroes of the Reef, just me and Jackie. Honestly, it was really nice, and we're just homebody people anyway, so that's what we did for the holiday. And I have a lot of thoughts about this game. We only played it once, so I don't know if I'm going to do a full extensive review on it once we dive into it a little further, but I kind of wish there was a little bit more to it. Everything kind of seems a little bit disconnected for me so far from an initial impression, but the production value, of course, is off the roof. And I don't know, I just feel like it's a little punishing. Like when fighting monsters, I feel like, why do you spend a majority of the time building up all these dice to automatically lose them from just fighting the monsters once? And I don't know, I just need to spend a lot more time with it before I give you my full thoughts about it. But Tidal Blades Heroes of Reef, that was one game we played on July 4th. On July 5th, I played Clash of Rage one more time just to give it one more chance because I really love the holofoil cards, but I ended up just getting rid of it anyway. Now, next game on this list was Cactus Town. Now, this one was a surprisingly fun game. It is a very light asymmetric game, and ultimately, it's just a card game. Everyone has a different role with a different objective. If you are the sheriffs, you're trying to get the thieves into jail. If you are the thieves, you're trying to loot and then run away from the town. If you are the dancer, you're trying to go to different areas and I think complete different deals before like time runs out or something. Ultimately, what I found very interesting about this game is that it meets a light to medium asymmetric gap that I don't have in any other part of my collection. So I'm very excited to try it out again and see how it plays out because I did play as a sheriff initially, and it's really fun being able to like figure out what everyone's roles are, and different cards are going to like unfold and unveil as you expand throughout the map. But overall, I love the artwork, I love the asymmetry. If you have played Cactus Town, let me know what you think about it down in the comments below because I haven't heard much talk about this game. However, it's pretty fun. Now moving on to the next one, which was Marvel Champions. Now this one, I decided to continue the campaign for the Rise of Red Skull. Got absolutely murdered by Crossbones, but I did eventually beat him along with Absorbing Man, played as the Wasp, played as Ant-Man, and those two honestly are so freaking interesting because they have like cards that expand and become giant cards, which is so thematic in the game. Absolutely loved it. They are a blast to play with. I have a side table set up over here if you haven't seen in my past vlogs, but it's all set up here because I'm just like making my way through the campaign when I get a chance to. And yeah, next up I think is going to be Red Skull. And I want to try him out against some other new characters too. I have so many characters to get through, so many villains, and it's a little bit overwhelming at times, but most of the time I'm honestly just watching Dale, the casual gamer. If you haven't seen his channel, it's all about Marvel Champions and a lot of really fun, engaging solo play. And every time I watch this video, I always realize I'm doing something wrong, which is why I haven't really talked about Marvel Champions just yet because I'm constantly trying to fix the mistakes that I'm making as I'm playing the game. So that is Marvel Champions. Moving on to the next one, which was Street Fighter. Okay, this one also was pretty surprising in that I avoided this game for a long time because I love the IP, but I was just afraid in that the game was going to lack a lot of depth. But I love the combo plays in this game. Like everyone has their own set of unique cards. And even though the miniatures are beautiful, the production value is insanely good. There's like a huge missile rack. Like that's just part of the terrain in the game that you can like destroy and interact with. It's so cool. But what I love so far from one initial play is the combo generation because there are linker cards that, once they have like a certain symbol on different cards, you can link cards together and perform attacks from a ton of different distances and like line of sight mechanics, which I found really fun. So I'm definitely interested in playing the game more, especially with all the miniatures that I have and all the characters to like dive into. The only issue is that I don't know like how often we will be able to like table this game because Jackie doesn't like fighting games. In general, I just feel like it's a harder game to table because you have these asymmetric player decks versus other games where everyone has like the same playing field and same mechanics. So I don't know how I feel about that just yet, but it is going to stay regardless because I am not getting rid of those miniatures. Now, next up, we had a couple of runs of Dwellings of Eldervale, but of course you all know how I feel about the game, and we did a gameplay too with Reams as well, where I barely won that one, and it was her first time playing too, so she honestly, with a couple more plays, I feel like Reams would absolutely destroy me. Now from there on July 11th all the way to July 16th, doesn't seem that long, but 5 days is a lot of days without gaming, I think. But with that huge gap, it was all spent learning client games, which ended up being Descent, Hues Cues, and Cat in the Box. So these were all done for a lifestyle shoot, and I do spend time learning and playing the game multiple times before going on a shoot. Now, Cat in the Box is a trick-taking game, and I highly recommend you watch Monique and Naveen's playthrough and / tutorial of it. They will explain this game much better than I can, but ultimately it's a trick-taking game. And what's really interesting too is that there are prediction elements, so you can predict to see how many tricks that you are going to win in that round, which will ultimately score you more bonus points as you connect different suits along this like community board. And then the second game we played was also Descent. There is a lot of app integration, both with combat and like inventory, which I found really easy to use because I love how instead of gathering a bajillion different resource tokens and like putting them all in front of you, all of that is tracked by the app, which is really cool. It's so funny comparing the interaction that I have with this game playing solo and then watching all of my models playing it too, because it's just a different experience. Like playing a solo, I was so immersed into the game and I was just lost into the world and the story building. And then when you see them play it cooperatively, it's so funny because like they are used to more like lighter games. And then this, Descent is a huge jump, huge step in complexity versus the other games that we've covered. So to see them interact with the different mechanisms, to see them like fighting in combat and exploring the map, exploring the terrain and experiencing this first time ever app integration with a dungeon crawler for them, it's just really funny to see their eyes light up and experience a whole new world of board gaming. They also have been buying their own board games too, which is unheard of. I think Anthony and Morley too aren't really big on board games, but they told me that they went to Target the other day and bought Jumanji, which I think is a huge step into the gateway of our beautiful hobby. So I'm excited to see them dive more into these games, especially from doing these shoots. Now, the last game that we played in the lifestyle shoot was Hues Cues. This one too also is a really fun party game. I would consider it a party game because it's really quick to teach. You ultimately have one cue giver, and I'm excited to show you the cinematics and the commercials that I've made for it too. But there is a cue giver who has a card, and this card has 4 different squares on them, and those squares all have different colors. And then it's this giant, huge board with a huge gradient of colors, exactly like how you see it on the cover. And the whole point of the cue giver is to give them a clue that is going to pinpoint their guess out of those hundreds of squares into one specific one. So the clue that we've been using throughout the entire commercial was banana, right? Bananas are yellow for the most part. So their goal is to pick one specific yellow square that matches that exact gradient that the clue giver is giving. But the twist to this is that they only get one guess. And they're also, it's not just one solid color yellow, right? There's like a whole bunch of different versions of yellow. And however you interpret banana, whether it being ripe, unripe, green bananas, black bananas that are super sweet, who knows what, right? And then from there, the cue giver is going to give another hint, another clue, and then it's going to be a 2-word cue. So then they can say like kinda ripe. So now knowing that, it changes the perception of what you initially thought, right? So maybe you thought it was like just a classic yellow banana, but then hearing kinda ripe, now you're like, oh shoot, maybe my marker should be closer towards like the brown side. And then there's like a square that the cue giver is going to reveal, and then the center of that square is going to be like the main target, and then everyone that is within that vicinity of that square where the cue giver has placed that marker, they're going to score the most amount of points, and then everyone around the vicinity of that is going to score like 1 point. Really easy game to teach, really fun. I love it when they love games, especially the ones that I'm showing them as well. Okay, now moving on from there, we're more than halfway through the month. And the next couple games actually were Honey Buzz. Honey Buzz, I did a whole extensive review on it if you want to check that out too. But seriously, it's such a fun game. I feel like it's a good alternative for some reason to Everdell because they both have that nature theme. They both have amazing production quality. And the worker placement is very different to Everdell. In Everdell, you're trying to build up a city, but in Honey Buzz, you're trying to build up a hive. And this hive is connected. They're not giving you specific victory points like in Everdell with your city, because with every card that you gain in your engine builder, you gain specific victory points for that. But versus Honey Buzz, in Honey Buzz, your actions are triggered every time you complete the hive. And that one mechanism alone is what keeps bringing me back to playing the game. Just absolutely love it. Everyone that I've showed has loved it as well. Okay, now to wrap up towards the end of this month, the last few games that we played, this next one was when I had an amazing game day with Monique from Before You Play. We got to play so many really fun games. It's funny because I actually thought that we had very different tastes when it comes to gaming, but in reality, I feel like we actually have very, very similar taste in gaming. Just because like from the games that I see them cover on Before You Play, I just feel like a lot of the games that I cover are very like surface level and like they look pretty, but then for them, they have like very amazing strategy, dry Euro games, which I love too, but I just don't typically cover them, or I don't like automatically play them And I'm just not as inclined to pick up the covers of the games that they choose. But every game that Monique brought that day, honestly, was super, super fun. And I would pick any of them up in a heartbeat. So the first one that we played was Sagrada. I know, everyone has literally played this game. I've seen this posted about a ton of times. I just haven't, it's not something that I would go out and choose, but it's something that I would definitely pick up now because in Sagrada, it's a dice worker placement game. It's really simple because you have this player board and ultimately you roll dice. And with those dice, you're going to take them and allocate them in a specific pattern on your player board. And that's where the interesting part comes in because there are specific rules that you have to follow, like colors cannot touch each color, they cannot be adjacent to each other, and the different pips on the dice also can't match with each other, but you can also sacrifice, different mechanisms in order to break those rules. And I absolutely love that game. We played it like twice, really, really quick. Next up, we played Hanamikoji. Now, Hanamikoji is a really small, child-friendly card game. And in it, it's honestly really fascinating. So there are, I think, 4 mechanisms that you can play on your turn. And ultimately, you're trying to win the favor of several different geishas that are, in the center of the playing field. And there are different colors of the geishas, and each one has a different number of points that will score you by the end of the round. And your goal is to get to 11 points in one round. If not, it repeats again until someone gets 11 points. So with these 6 or 7 geishas that are on the board, we also have a hand of geishas as well that none of us know. And then we also have 4 tiles, which are the mechanisms that I was talking about. So with those 4 tiles, we can use them. And once we expend all of them, then the round is over. For one of the tiles, you take 3 cards from your hand and 2 of them are going to be for you to keep. And one of them is going to be for the other player to keep, and they decide who keeps what. So in this case, if I were to play 3 cards face up, let's say I play 2 blues and 1 pink, then Monique can choose to, let me keep the 2 blues, and then she takes the 1 pink, and then we play them on the field. And whoever has the most of each geisha, for example, if she has the most pink geishas, then she will win the number of points associated with that geisha. So that's only 1 tile. We have a second tile that lets us choose 2 pairs of cards from our hands, so we have 4 cards total. And we make those pairs ourselves. And then the other person can decide which pair that they take and which pair that we keep. The third tile is called Secret, where we take 1 card from our hand and then just hide it, and that card is just going to be one that we score at the end of the game. And then lastly is Trade-Off, where we choose 2 cards from our hand, we place them face down, and then those cards are not going to be scored this round. I think it's cool being given a set amount of information, having this center community board that is developing and can be added to your hand of information as well, and then seeing what the other players play, because once you flip over a tile, they can't use that anymore. I think for one of the games, I had like 3 5s in my hand, so I hid 1 as one of the actions, so it was a secret that I was going to take later back. And then Monique later offered me a 5, and 5 is like one of the highest point value cards in the game, so then I took the 5 and ultimately like scored 11 points with all these other things stacked up. So just being able to manipulate, being able to play mind games with your opponent, fascinating, this game. Love it. This is definitely something that I really want to add to my travel collection as well. Now, the third game that Monique introduced me to was Agricola, which I know I haven't played at all. I haven't played any of the Uwe games, which is really bad. But that has changed now because she taught me Agricola. I actually know exactly why I haven't played Agricola and a lot of the Uwe games. It's because like the cover art seems a little bit old and like outdated for me, and I don't really like historical looking games. I like modern, sleek, more elegant looking covers. But this is why you should not judge a book by its cover. Lesson learned from me too, because Agricola is amazing. Like, I love worker placement, and the amount of decisions that you have to anticipate for Agricola honestly was amazing. And I just love seeing this engine that was building and having so many different decisions to consider. It honestly kind of reminded me of viticulture with the amount of decision making that you had available, and I'm all about that because I don't really get analysis paralysis. Honestly, kind of just like to go with the motions and just see how the game plays out. I don't really play to win unless I'm in like my super competitive mood, which is really rare. I mostly just enjoy gameplay when we play. But Monique, if you're watching this, thank you so much for hanging out with me and introducing me to all those amazing games. Agricola, I think, was definitely my favorite from the 3, but I think I'm waiting to see if they remake Agricola in like a deluxe version, because I am all in for that. Just like how they did a deluxe version of Castles of Burgundy, I would definitely back an Agricola All In Deluxe version too, because that game was amazing. The last few games that I got super lucky to play with Amy and Maggie were Trois Dice. Side note, I'm actually taking French because I'm going to Paris next year, so give me a year and I will learn French to my utmost ability. I got to play these games with Amy Maggie from Thinker Themer, the Joey fam. If you're here, hello. And aside from Trois Dice, we also played Dungeons and Dice in Danger, something in that order. I'll pop it up right here. And we also played Marvel Dice Throne, which is completely out of their realm of games, but I made them play it anyway, and I'm so happy that they were open to playing it as well. But let's quickly talk about the three. So Trois Dice, if you have watched my past vlogs about this channel, more recent ones too, I have unveiled that I am not a fan of roll and writes in general, but I will say that Trois Dice is one roll and write that I would definitely pick up because it was really fun. So in this game, you roll a set of dice that are there's a counter in the middle. There's like a day cycle and a night cycle. And one die will destroy different buildings that you have in front of you, because your goal is to ultimately build different buildings and invest into different resources, and also have different, like, I don't know what role they are. Let's just say they look like royalty that you can invest in order to give them different multipliers that will ultimately score you more victory points in the end. Bottom line, you take the dice from the roll dice pool and you can allocate those dice depending on where they land. So if like there's 4 yellow, then you can make 4 gold on your player board. Or if there's like a red 5, then you can get 5 red flags or build a building in the 5 slot, in the 5 row column. And there's just a lot of different decisions that I really, really loved. There are just a lot of really fun decisions that I was pleasantly surprised to make as you're playing this roll and write. It's really simple to teach, but I love the element of surprise that the dice gives, because there are 2 surprises, right? One from the row of dice that you can choose to allocate your resources into. And the second die is where the building is going to be destroyed from that black die. And you can also invest into protecting your column as well. So all those in mind, I don't even like roll and writes, but I had a really fun time playing Trois Dice. So that one, if I were to pick up any roll and write at all, it would be that. This game, however, we'll call it DDD. This one was a little bit more punishing than I expected. I absolutely love the artwork and I just love being able to explore this dungeon, but a lot of it didn't really make much thematic sense because you can go in and out of this dungeon from different angles, from different starting points, because you can allocate your dice in, you know, different areas. And it was also too punishing. Like, I wish there were better ways for you to mitigate the dice as well. 100% I did not play well at all, and that didn't affect, you know, my perspective on it, because again, I'm not big on roll and writes, but I just think that if there were ways to mitigate dice rolls, it would make it more interesting versus just if you can't fix the dice, then you lose health. And yeah, but yeah, it was interesting. I love the artwork, I love the concept, but it's not something that I would pick up on my own. And the last game that I played this month was Marvel Dice Throne. Amy Maggie asked if there was a quick game that we can play before they head out. And, you know, honestly, Dice Throne was sitting right there in my living room. And I was like, you know what, we can play this one. I know it's very out of scope of what you two typically play, because they don't play, you know, combat-oriented games. They also don't play like dice chuckers. But I'm so glad that they were open to playing it. Honestly, they would have destroyed me in 2 seconds. I did not win that one fair and square because they took it easy me, hands down. Side note, Amy and Maggie, if you're watching this, first off, Maggie is an incredible teacher. She taught me Trois Dice in like 5 minutes. I would have taken 15 minutes to teach that game, and by the end, I still wouldn't have told you what the whole point of the game was. I was bragging nonstop about me being undefeated in Aquatica, and within like a 3-day span, Monique destroyed me, first off. And then Amy later on came and destroyed me as well in like a heartbeat. They can just see the mechanisms so clearly. It's just wild. They're so freaking smart. It's insane. So, but anyways, that was July, a really, really fun month for gaming. I am seriously so grateful for the amount of time that we got to just hang out with everybody. It was amazing. It was the best thing I could have ever asked for. And with that, the Shelf of Shame, by the way, has only 10 games left as of the time of this recording. So hopefully by the time Gen Con is finished, I am going to say that I'm going to be down to my last few games. So I'm going to be buying games at Gen Con. I'll tell you now, I'm going to break my rule and buy some games before my Shelf of Shame is over. But I will say that by the end of summer, this current Shelf of Shame, it's going to be gone. We're on a good track. So anyways, Wolfpack, we are signing out. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me, checking out which games that we all play together. And yeah, just packing up for Gen Con. hopefully getting some really cool vlogging gear together and figuring out how to do some daily vlogs for the weekend. So with that said, I'll see you all in the next one.
Spider-Man, 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 Spider-Man.
Everyone's just talking.
Coming for you, Spider-Man. I didn't know what that means.